The map report component supports adding layers to display different kinds of data. For example, you could create a report with a Bing map background with that day's delivery locations and display a route between them. You can annotate the map with legends, titles, labels, and other features that can help users make sense of the data. A map on a report can use two types of data, spatial and analytical. The spatial data provides location information and can be a point, line, or route, or a shape. Reporting services includes a number of United States maps, including state maps with county-borough boundaries, or you can supply your own spatial data from a variety of sources. Spatial data is required for a map, which makes sense because without spatial data, it really isn't a map. You can use geographic or planar data in a map. Geographic data are locations and shapes on a spherical surface, most commonly the surface of the Earth. It has to handle various projections, which define how to display spherical coordinates onto a flat, planar computer monitor or piece of paper. Planar data uses two-dimensional geometric coordinates on a flat surface, commonly using x and y axes. The other type of data, analytical, provides information about the map and objects on it. So spatial data on a map might locate customers, and analytical data could provide information about each customer's aggregated sales over the last 3 years, or whatever. Or just about any other kind of information that you have data to support. The optional analytical data must have some kind of a relationship to the spatial data, so that the map report can relate the two. Reporting services support several types of spatial data, which you can select when you create a new map or add a new layer. The first is Map Gallery. The map component has a number of built-in Map Gallery reports. This spatial data is embedded into the report and comes from the U.S. Census Bureau. And then there are also Esri shapefiles. Esri is the Environmental Systems Research Institute, a major vendor of mapping data and software. These shapefiles are a collection of files that define geographic and geometric shapes and attributes. And finally, there's SQL Server spatial data. Spatial data in SQL Server is defined as SQL geography and SQL geography data types. You can write a query against this data and use it directly in a map report. And you can also create custom locations in a map at design time, which becomes part of the map data. A map can have multiple layers that display different kinds of data. There are 4 types of layers. The polygon, line, and point layers each display one kind of spatial data. The map wizard will automatically set the layer type based on the spatial data that you add to it. The 4th layer type is a tile, which lets you add a Bing map background. All of the layers and the shapes within them are highly configurable through the various property dialog boxes. In this exercise, I'm going to create a report with a global map of all the people associated with the AdventureWorks company. I'll make use of the SQL Server spatial data in the person.address table in order to generate the map, and use a Microsoft Bing map to identify their locations around the world. Now, by the way, creating this report requires a connection to the internet. If you aren't connected, then you just basically need to skip the step of generating the Bing map because the report component will download that over an available internet connection. Okay, so here I am within the Visualizations report. Come over here to Solution Explorer, right-click on Reports, Add, New Item. Select Report. And I'll name this Customer Map. And click on Add to add the report. So right off the bat, I'm going to start by making this area larger. Map reports pretty much always can benefit from additional space. All right, come over to the toolbox, and I'll select Map, and as soon as I drop it, it opens up this new Map Layer dialog box. So notice the options that you have. You can use various USA maps in the Map Gallery, Esri shapefiles, or a SQL Server spatial query, and that's the option that I'm going to use. and I'll click on Next. Now the report doesn't yet have a data set, so I can't choose an existing data set. None exists. So I'm just going to leave the option set here to add a new data set with SQL Server spatial data. And I'll click on Next. Okay, so now I need to create a connection to the SQL Server spatial data source. I have an existing data source connections, but it's the AdventureWorks LT database. I don't want to use that, so I'll create a new one. I'm going to use the AdventureWorks 2012 database. So I'll name it that. But I do have a shared data source here within the project. So rather than reinventing the wheel, I'll use that existing data source. And click on OK, and that creates a new data source that I can use. Okay, so now it's time to define the query to grab the spatial data from the database. So I can either use this query designer, or just make it a little bit easier, I'm going to click on Edit as Text and just enter the select statement directly. It's a fairly simple select statement. So I'm going to select address ID, city, spatial location. As you imagine, that's the field with the spatial data. From person.address. So simple query returns just the information that's needed to generate the map, as well as tooltips with the city name. And I can go ahead and click on the Run button there, and you can see the kind of data that we get back. And this is actually just a subset of the full amount of data. The table actually contains about 20,000 rows. All right, so we're done with the query, so I'll click on Next. This Choose Spatial Data and Map View Options page displays the general distribution of data, and by default selects the spatial location field here and the layer type of point. So those are fine for this map. And also I want to add a Bing Maps layer. And rather than roads, I want to select aerial here so that we get a satellite image of the world. And there you can see it's downloading that image. All right, there's various other configuration things that you can do on this page, but that's fine for this report, so I'll click on Next. On this Choose Map Visualization page, you can select how the data is going to appear on the map. I'm going to keep the basic marker map as the selection. But as you can see, it can also create a bubble map where the size of the bubble is dependent upon the underlying data, as well as an analytical marker map. I'll click on Next. So here on the Choose Color Theme and Data Visualization page, I can select a theme and the marker used to indicate each person's location. So I'm going to stick with the generic theme there. And I'll leave the markers as circles. But I'll uncheck the single color map. And now you can see that the markers are all pretty much random colors. It just makes it easier to see the different circles. All right, so that's the last step. I'll click on Finish, and we're done with our overall map design. All right, I'll go ahead and move that to the upper corner, make it bigger. Reduce that size a little bit. Actually, I'll reduce it a little bit more, just so you can see the whole thing. This is another case where having a nice large monitor is very helpful, or at least a very high resolution. All right, at this point, I'll go ahead and preview the report. Probably take a few moments to load all those 20,000 data points. And there we have the report. So we can see right off the bat that we have a pretty high concentration of customers here in the United States, fair number in Europe, and a lot along the eastern coast of Australia. And then there's also an interesting marker right here off the coast of Africa. Unfortunately, there's none in Alaska, but that's the nature of the data. Okay, but this is a real weird one here. Appears to be out in the Gulf of Guinea. Maybe it's an island resident? Well, don't know at this point. Okay, so I'm going to return to Design View. Now the map component has almost unlimited options for customization, even before you start adding analytic data, such as annual sales. So I'm going to make two simple refinements. I'm going to change the map's title and add each customer city as a tooltip to the markers. Okay, so I'll start with the title. So I'll select it up there and select the text, and I can change it right there. Or what I can do is right-click on this and select Title Properties and change the title text right here. So I'm going to name this Global Customers. All right, and then as you can see, there's various other options. I can angle it, I can change the alignment, the title position, and so forth. And I can also do things like change the font and shadow and various other things like that. That's good enough for now. So there we've changed the title text. Okay, so now I'm going to select the map component there. And here I actually need to scroll over a bit there, because I need to work with this Map Layers box. I'll right-click the Point Layer 1 here. This is the layer that adds the customer markers to the map. And I'll select Point Properties. And that opens up this Map Point Properties dialog box, because I want to set the tooltip here. And I want to display the user's city. And so I just select it from the list of fields that are available as part of the data set that's bound to the map. And as usual, notice that I can define expressions for most properties within the map. So this could be handy to concatenate information from multiple fields that appears when you display the tooltip. Okay, the marker size of 10 point is a little bit on the big side, so I'll reduce that down to 5 point. Make it a little bit easier within the scale of the map. And I'll click on OK to save those changes. And I'll once again preview the report. And eventually the map appears. And now you can see that if I hover over any of these data points, it displays the name of the city for a particular customer. And now we can come down here and see that the city for this customer is Dusseldorf. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure Dusseldorf is in Germany, which I'm pretty sure is still in Europe. So it appears as though the AdventureWorks database has some problems with its spatial data, at least for that one data field. But fortunately, the rest of the data appears to be fine.